Welcome to the Hats and Bats podcast with Kevin and Matt. Welcome to the 8th episode of the Hats and Bats podcast. Today is Monday, May 13th. God, Kevin, you're looking extra sexy today.
I'm trying. I'm only looking sexy today because my first computer apparently just not working today. It's just not up to it. Poor internet reception, although every other device in the house is working fine. But I do have a new setup. Hopefully, so I can sound better. Hopefully, we've worked through. I was all excited because I'm like, okay, I figured this out. I know how to sound good. I know how to look good. And then I come down here, log into everything, not working the way I want it to. So switched up computers a little bit. Hopefully this works better. Hopefully I sound a little bit better as well. Got a new microphone. Got the little boom arm here with the hanging mic.
It looks professional.
Trying to. Got a nice little, fancy bookshelf with the hats. I got some autographed balls, the books, because I love that. I love when the experts talk on ESPN when they're away from on location over there in their house. I love that. They have the bookshelf in the back. I've always wanted to be one of those guys, and so far so good. I got it all set up, so I'm excited.
Maybe you can get on. Do you follow Room Raiders on Twitter or anything like that, where they would give people ratings based on their COVID setup? And you get deducted if you had wires, you get higher rating if you have exotic artwork.
Mm-hmm.
I think I see your buffalo wing behind you.
Yep, I like that.
I like that. So if I was giving you points right now, I would probably say it's a 8.8. I would say diverse, topical.
Higher than it usually is. Did you not like the previous setup?
I couldn't really see. I could see the paintings on the wall, but I couldn't really tell what else it was.
Yeah.
Mine, I have to figure out how to set it up where it's not getting my door, but then you can see all of my hats and then the crap that I have on top.
Yeah.
So we're a work in progress.
We are. But listen, we're 8 episodes in. The one thing that you can't knock us on is the content. I think the content's been great. It's been awesome. We got some great things to talk about this week as well. A lot going on in baseball, but we're going to hit up on, again, me and Matt's, all-time favorite teams. We're going to talk some ballparks on our bucket list. We got a lot of great stuff to talk about here on this week. So let's get it started. We're gonna beat it out. We're gonna talk about some trivia. Matt's gonna get into the Detroit Tigers City Connect jerseys. The Cleveland jerseys have also come out as well. We're gonna talk about that a little bit. We're gonna do for a rounding second, a little segment called Coast to Coast, where we break down different storylines across the baseball landscape, but also talk about which coast or which part of America we'd rather be in for these answers. Digging for third, we're going to talk about our stadium bucket list. And finally, coming home, our all-time favorite teams are starting to really come together now. And this week, we talk about the rotations. So, Matt, let's get it started here. Let's go to beat it out. Let's get it started.
Can I be a complete jerk to start it off and just go off script before we even get going with the trivia?
I don't mind.
We haven't talked about this. Did you see the report about Alonso's contract extension that was supposedly offered to him that he turned down over the winter?
I actually have not seen this.
Really? Okay, no. So I think it was Martino or one of the beat reporters got leaked over this weekend that apparently Alonso turned down a 7-year contract for $158 million. So it'd been an average salary of about $22 million, and he turned it down. So all this comes out during the his whole struggles, even though he's been hitting better lately. But it was okay, maybe that's the reason why he's pressing and not doing as well, is because he knew he had that number, the 158, and then maybe that number now is drastically shrinking. I thought that was a fair annual value and analysis for him. He's not going to be Freddie Freeman. He's not going to be Matt Olson level. I think they're 28 to 30 million a year. 22 to me is a very team friendly, but also Alonso friendly deal. And I was actually really shocked that he turned that down. So then I'm thinking, who leaks that? And this to me just reeks of Cohen leaking this information where it's look, he's not doing as well. That number that we floated before, he's not going to even get that number now. Add into the fact that he's a Boris client. I don't know if that's going to start to derail things. Although he has been hitting better, I just don't know if that's weighing over him where he's I had 158 in the bank and now I might be looking at much lower annual value, much shorter deal. So I don't know what to really think of that. It seems to be like nobody's disputing the numbers, so that to me tells me it's kind of accurate in the range.
But see what I'm seeing here, Matt, on Twitter, because I went to Martino's page, and I didn't see a thing. There's nothing on Martino's Twitter handle that at least I'm seeing here. The one thing I am seeing about his contract being leaked is I do see the number 70 years at 158 million.
Like Sherman.
But see, I'm seeing here that whoever this Finkelstein, Ryan Finkelstein, whoever that is. So it looks like a guy on Twitter.
Let me do this. Let me share my screen right now.
He's mentioned it, but I'm not seeing Sherman tweeting anything out. I'm not seeing any of those big guys. Now listen, let's just say this: if that is true, okay, if that is, we can go right now with this conversation that being true. If he was offered that contract and he said no, listen, he's the player. He has every right to. It's a huge gamble because the way he's playing right now, that I don't know if I'm giving him $22 million a year. And again, it's still early in the season. We're only a couple months in. We would like to see a better rendition of Pete than the one we're getting right now. I think still Met fans want him to stay. I think they would be comfortable paying him $22 million a year. If it's true that came out and he rejected it, maybe he thinks he can get a bigger offer. You know, the one thing I will say over the last couple of seasons, the way the market has worked. What happened? Are we okay?
I have no idea what. We're back. We're back.
We're okay. Everything good?
I'm messing with things.
I have my hands up. I don't think I touched. Was that you touched it?
That was me. Yes.
All right. Perfect. All right. Okay.
We're good.
So if that's what happened, listen, you can't blame him for thinking he's going to get more one day. But the way the market has worked out is players are not getting what they're asking for. They're just not. Unless their name's Yamamoto, they're not getting what they want. So we all knew this was a gamble. It's a big gamble for Pete going into the season being unsigned. He needs to have a big year. He's not having a big year right now. And that's incredibly frustrating. I'm sure Pete is incredibly frustrated. I think that's compounding the issue that he is pressing at the plate. We're not getting the same Pete Alonso. You know, I don't want to go into a huge Met, soapbox right here. But, over the weekend, Matt, I really was disenchanted with this team. Even with Nimmo hitting the home run last night and giving the Mets the win. So they salvaged one game in the series. My fear is that's just who this group is. This group is just incredibly inconsistent. They have times where they look great. They show this potential. There are times Jeff McNeil looks like he should be a perennial 300 hitter. I'll even back off that and say a 280 hitter. We don't see it.
250 I'll settle for.
There are times Francisco Lindor looks like he's this 5-tool player, this godsend. There are times Pete looks like the best power hitter in the sport. There are times Brandon Nimmo is like this ideal leadoff hitter. But then there's all the other times where they're not that. It's just little glimpses. This group has not been able to string it together. At least string it together consistently, whether it be for half a season, 3 months in a season, what have you. There are times when Pete takes off and he's trying to carry everyone else. There are times when Nimmo takes off and he's trying to carry everyone else. Beginning of the season when the Mets were doing well, it wasn't Lindor. It wasn't Pete. It wasn't McNeil. It wasn't Nimmo. It was Tyrone Taylor. It was
Alvarez.
It was Alvarez for a little bit. It was Beatty for a little bit. Now even Beatty's looking like last year's version of Beatty.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of question marks with this group, and to bring it back to the Pete Alonso conversation, it was the first time being a Pete Alonso fan, really being a fan of this group, where I started to think to myself, if Pete goes and this group breaks up, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I think I finally gotten to that point. And listen, again, I love Brandon Nimmo, but I also think I've been very realistic about who Brandon Nimmo is. It was a great moment last night. I think he's a very good player. I just think that there are ways these guys should be used. I think Lindor should be hitting leadoff so he can get better pitches to hit because he is our best player. And the fact that they're just going to stick with what they've been doing, Nimmo leading off, McNeil hoping that he's this 280 hitter, hoping Pete is this 50 home run hitter, hoping Lindor is this 5-tool player we can stick in the 3 spot. They're not. At least they're not consistently enough to justify to keep rolling with this. So I don't know what the answer is, but I'll tell you, the first time really this weekend, it was definitely that no hit bid on
Yeah.
Saturday. I mean, listen, Max Fried was great. I'm
He's
sorry.
not he's not a
I'm sorry. It's too much of the same thing. It's just
yep.
our pitching's been outstanding.
No, I will
Quintana,
disagree. I'm going to push back.
go ahead.
I'm getting so incredibly annoyed with their pitching
Mhm.
based on the fact that they walk the entire ballpark.
They do.
It's just you walk the leadoff hitter. You walk the leadoff hitter. It's a guarantee they're going to end up on second base because they can't hold anybody. That's what happened to Ottavino last night.
Yep.
You walk the leadoff hitter. He steals second base. You have no shot at throwing him out. Next thing you know, you get a base hit up the middle by Azuna, and then you're losing again.
Yep.
They walk more hitters than I've ever seen them do. And I'm like, you are not an overpowering staff. Like Scott is really like they're only like Severino's up there too. But I mean, they're not like a 98 hard slider group. They're like a control group. And you are walking the ballpark, which is an automatic double every time. And I'm just getting super annoyed with them because it's like they don't do the same thing when they're batting. Like they don't work counts.
Nope.
They're not walking.
Nope.
The amount of weak contact that they have.
Oh
if I see McNeil roll over a ball to second base again, I'm like, dude, you're getting like an outside fastball and you're rolling it over every single time to the second baseman. I'm like, change up your approach. Like when you won the batting title, it'd be like, okay, they'd shift on you, they leave the left side open. You're throwing the bat head out there, you're driving the ball to left field. He doesn't do any of that anymore. I'm like, they're just a completely flawed team to me right now. And they're borderline unwatchable. Yeah. They went down 4-0 in the other game. I flipped it over to the basketball playoffs because I'm like, they gave up the 3 home runs. I'm not going to waste my time watching this. There's no energy to them whatsoever.
And I would love to see their barrel percentages and just how horrible it's been throughout the year. But to push back on your pushing back on the pitching, Matt, this is what we knew though going into the season. The pitching was supposed to be the weak part of this team. It was supposed to be the Achilles heel. It was supposed to be the reason why we look back at this season and go, okay, we're not really contending this year because we don't have a rotation that can contend. But it's the exact opposite. It's the one thing that's actually keeping us in these ball games along with our bullpen. Quintana on Friday did not have great stuff. Guy went 6 innings, gave up 4 runs. Those are the games we need to be competing in. We need to try to win, be able to win those games every now and then. Severino looked good again. Like Christian Scott had another great performance, not putting up runs. He's Jacob deGrom 2.0 already.
Yeah.
This is the stuff where, Matt, I don't expect these guys to be sub-4 ERA guys all year long. But when they pitch and they go 4, 5, 6 innings and they're only giving up 3, 4 runs, I'm sorry. We have to be winning more than half of those games because that's the only way we're going to be able to contend. Well, at least that's what I thought. Because I thought, oh, this offense is going to be good enough. Alonso is, again, a 50 home run hitter. Lindor is an all-star. McNeil's going to hit 280. Nimmo is a great leadoff hitter. JD Martinez is back. Brett Beatty's going to take this step forward. At least we saw it at the beginning of the year. That's what was going to happen. And it's not happening. And that it's every single year with this group.
They seem to always go through like a June swoon. It's every single year. They are doing their June swoon in May. Yep. And again, I can handle games if you're losing them 3-2. Like they go down. I'm shocked that they won last night. They go down several runs. I'm like, they don't have the offense right now to do it. They can't put together continuous good at bats throughout. They don't make pitchers work. The pitch counts don't get up. They're just, to me, I saw on Twitter, there was a poll just some person put up like, are you do you feel engagement with this team? Is there anything that you find appealing about this team? It was like 75% that was like, I'm already disengaged with this team. And it's May, was today, the 13th.
Yeah.
And I'm like, to me, you got Bader complaining about playing time. JD Martinez is not up to speed yet. They just, to me, are already to the point where I'm like, they're annoying me. Yeah, and then I see the Pete numbers and I'm like, give me a break with that.
I'm not getting the Bader disappointment in his playing time. Am I missing something?
Isn't he a platoon player? Like, isn't
Yes,
that what he was
yes,
signed for? Like,
yes.
I don't.
He says he wasn't. He said he was not signed to be a platoon player. That he was going to be the starting center fielder. And listen, I think he's hitting like 270 this year. But dude, you have no pop.
Yeah,
You're the bottom of the lineup hitter, and you also have a history of getting hurt.
yeah,
So guess what? You're not someone I can rely on.
yeah.
So yeah, dude, I'm with you. And you mentioned the June swoon. I'm gonna see if I can present this on our screen here. Uh, the schedule is not favorable. It's just not. When we're talking about, hang on one second here. How do I do this?
I
There
feel
we
like
go.
their schedule already has been like really tough when you
Yeah.
consider playing like
I'm just,
Milwaukee and the Braves
well,
twice,
I'm just gonna read it off
Dodgers.
for the sake of hopefully not screwing up our little telecast here. All right, so to start off June, they had the Diamondbacks. They play the Nationals, who are a 500 team this year.
Surprise.
They're no cakewalk. The Phillies, the Marlins, the Padres, the Rangers, the Cubs, the Yankees, the Astros.
So they could be
That's
sellers
June.
by July.
That's if they're not a near 500, a game or two below 500 or over 500. By the time July swings around, they're going to be sellers. They're going to have to be. They're going to have to be.
So what I have, again, if I could present this, I would, but we're working through those difficulties. So Joel Sherman said on MLB Now, his like the headline is, should the Mets trade Pete Alonso if they're 500 or slightly below at the deadline? And then the little writing up says, the term Sherman is reporting that the Mets offered Pete were 7 years for 158. Alonso turns that deal down, and it sounds like all talks have been shut down ever since. We know Pete's an emotional player. Is he putting his tail between his legs and like crying off the stage? We don't know. So then he goes on to say, if it's true this extension offer makes sense from the Mets, Pete's rejecting it doesn't make much sense. And will he be a Met come August? Like that's the little blurb that they have.
So to me,
I would not be surprised if they're like, look, we're going to try and get some ass. They reaped in prospects at the end of last year. Pete can still get you something big.
Matt, this is Jose Reyes all over again.
Yeah.
I don't care if he is not signed, you have to trade him. I
Yep,
mean,
I agree.
unless we're contending for a wild card, like we're seriously contending for a wild card spot. You're trading him. You have to trade him at the deadline. You have to get something for him at the risk of getting nothing. Because to me, this is going to be worse than Reyes. Because Reyes' career tailed off, and Pete's career could easily tail off too. I mean, it happens. We've seen it happen before. But if we look back and we have to relive this history again, like, oh my God, you got nothing for him. And you knew he wasn't signing back. You knew it was going to be difficult to re sign him after you offered him a contract. This will go over terrible with the fan base. I agree. You have to get something for him.
Yep. All right. So that was a little.
Wow, that was a soapbox there.
Yeah.
That's
Hey,
all right. It's okay. It's a fun little rant. We're Met fans. We're passionate. I'm wearing a Tigers hat today, but whatever. I mean, we're passionate Met fans, and this is what we do. Oh God, look at that gross.
Had to rock it. All right, so I'll keep it really short and sweet with the trivia today.
All right.
Get into the whole City Connects that we have. So let me see if I can move us around here. There we go, so we can see the screen. So yesterday with Mother's Day, MLB was just completely engrossed in pink. You had the pink socks. I actually didn't mind the hats that they wore. They had like the pink as the logo. You had catchers wearing like the typical catcher's gear in pink, but I didn't think it was like completely overdone. I thought that they had like, it was nice to have a little breast cancer awareness ribbon on their uniforms. I thought they looked nice. So when I was coming up with the trivia, there's only two current teams in Major League Baseball that have pink in their current uniform scheme. Do you know who the two teams are that have pink in their color scheme? And if you struggle, I'll give you a little caveat.
So does alternates count? No, it has
Yeah.
to be like their main color scheme.
Alternates count.
So then the Diamondbacks are one, correct?
The Diamondbacks do not actually have pink. Pink is not actually part of like their actual.
The teal, that's not part of it.
The teal is, but hold on, I'll actually look up because I looked up the Diamondbacks.
If it's not them, so an alternate does count.
Alternate does count. Okay, so there's Sedona red, teal, black, and white. Those are their official
Okay.
colors.
Okay. I mean, I'm gonna need help on this. I am drawing serious blanks right now.
Okay, think outside of the box. Don't think traditional. Think
Uh,
about things that have recently showed up and things that have recently been worn on field.
like in City Connect.
City Connect, yes, they are
Oh,
both
that
part of
counts.
the City Connects count, both
All right.
part of the
So
City
the
Connects.
Washington with the cherry blossoms. Yep.
There's your first one, the pink of the
Washington
cherry
with cherry
blossom, like you said.
blossoms. Is the other one also City Connect as
The
well?
other one is also a City Connect.
Not Pittsburgh, not Cincinnati, not the Mets because that's purple.
The most flamboyant City Connect uniform there is. Bartolo Colon hit his home run there.
Oh, it's San Diego.
San
That's pink in
Diego.
it. Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess a little bit. It has a little bit of pink in it. I could not get that in my mind.
It was funny. Last night, Christina's watching the Real Housewives, and one of the
Naturally.
guys has on the Padres hat, and she's like, "Oh, isn't that one of the hats you have?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to construct a question around this." I was like, "Yeah, anytime I can break out that hat,
I
I
love
will
it.
absolutely do it."
Isn't it
Yeah,
nice when the wives take particular notice and things like that?
I know. And she
You know,
automatically was like, "Don't you have that?" I was
oh,
like, my heart fluttered a little bit. I'm like, "That's
that's
why I
awesome.
married you."
Love it. Let's get into it. Yeah, let's talk a little Detroit Tiger City Connects. What do you think about it, buddy?
Okay. So when I saw them on field, they were better than I initially thought. When you first saw them, when you saw the sublimated like tread wear on their chest, did you think of anything?
I thought of tires. I did.
I thought roadkill. I thought of somebody who's just been like
Ah,
run
okay.
over.
Yeah.
Did you ever go vacationing in like New England, like Maine or Vermont or New Hampshire, anything like that?
Yeah. Been to Cape Cod.
There was this one restaurant that we used to go to. I think it was in New Hampshire. It was
Okay.
called Roadkill Cafe, where they would actually take like dead animals, cut like scrape them off the ground, and then actually serve them to people. And then when I
Nice.
first saw this, I'm like, it reminds me of the sign that they had where it was like a raccoon that got ran over. There was
There's
literal
no
tread marks on the
there's no
raccoon.
way that's a thing. They serve actual roadkill.
Yes, they serve
There's
actual roadkill. Yeah, again, this was like, oh
you
god.
talk. I'm gonna research. Go ahead.
So it had to be like, I think I stopped going on vacation with my parents when I was like 15. So maybe it stopped around, it had to be like 1995 to like 2000 in that range. But when I first saw these uniforms, that's like the only thing that I could think of. So the Tigers released theirs. They're actually the fourth team this year to release their City Connects. The Phillies were first, then the Mets, then the most recent was the Rays. And I think like the order is what made me hate these even more because like the Rays were knocked it out of the ballpark, to use a baseball pun.
Yep.
And Detroit was just like, "What are you doing?" So, like we were saying before, on the chest, you have Motor City written because that's their moniker. You have that sublimated pattern of the tire marks in the midnight blue and the royal blue. You have the royal blue that's the sublimation of the tread patterns. Okay, Detroit is the Motor City. Like I understand all of that stuff, but again, I just couldn't get past the whole roadkill. What I did like though, there's little subtle points throughout the uniform that I actually did kind of like. So you can see in the one picture I have over on the right, the sleeve patch that they have. It's a diamond patch, but I don't understand their execution. So when you look at his sleeve patch, what's the only number you can see?
Is that a one?
That's a one. But actually, the threes, it's actually 313 for the area code for Detroit. But the threes, for some reason, they made them reflective so you can't see them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So you just see the one. And I was like, what does the one represent? And the one actually represents Woodward Avenue in Detroit, which was a little history note, the first paved road in the United States, and it connects Metro Detroit north and south. So that's why they figured like that's some part they want to accent is having the one and then the 313. Okay, like whatever. The pants are black. There's the blue striping on the side. Again, they're just going with like the Phillies look is like the black on black, the Reds look, the black on black. Nothing out of the ordinary with these whatsoever. The hat is what I had probably the biggest issue with.
Yeah, it's awful.
How boring, like how
Yeah,
uncreative can you
I
possibly be?
I love the UV. I think that's awesome.
Why didn't
But
they
like
make that the main logo? You've got the
I
tiger eyes. Use
I
that.
don't know. Maybe because they've used it before. Like it's not as rare if you don't use it like that. I mean, I have one. like that somewhere in here where it's this one right here. Like they have like different hats that already look like that, but this is one of my favorite
I
logos right
love
there.
that
It's
logo.
awesome. It's absolutely awesome. Um, so maybe that's why, because again, too many of them get too artistic. It's just too like you can keep it simple and fun, and it still works. You can have all this hidden meaning stuff in there, but this is just like I don't know. I don't understand the thought process when it came to the design of the front. That I don't
It,
get. Let's
it's
just
like they
sell out Detroit.
they're like, we have Microsoft Paint and we have to make a
Mhm.
hat. Let's just put Detroit, make it italicized, and go.
Yep.
Like, if you look at the underbrim, you have the tiger eyes.
Yep.
Take the tiger eyes, just the tiger eyes. I don't want even the whole tiger face.
That'd be
Give me the
cool.
tiger eyes, put it
Yeah.
on. I would buy that hat in a
Sure.
second.
Sure.
But no, you put it on the underbrim so you can only see when you look up.
Yep.
Makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yep.
What I did think was actually like the coolest part of the entire uniform on the inside where like the laundry tag is, and then on the side of the hat, they actually have like the VIN number. So on the VIN number for the vehicle identification with like every car that we have, it's written DET, obviously for Detroit, then 1901, which is when like the American League decreed
Yep.
itself a major
Yep.
league.
Yep.
And then you've got the years that they won the World Series in 35, 45, 68, and 84.
Why
Like,
couldn't you
I
ask me
love
that
that.
question?
To me, that was unique. That was like creative. That was different. That was unique to Detroit.
Mhm.
Like, that to me was like creative. The rest of it was like, we're going to take the Pistons uniforms that they wore. We're just going to modify it a little bit. We've got to meet this due date. We're just going to throw everything together, make it black or navy blue and royal blue. There we go. So I didn't understand it. It didn't look bad on TV because they did have like the contrasting numbers on the back. The numbers are in white. So I liked it. But overall, again, middle of the pack, if
Yeah.
not towards the back, just because the hat just annoyed me to no avail. It's just complete lacks creativity.
Yeah, I agree. I
And
agree.
with
Was not a fan.
the Indians, so how many times am I going to call them the Indians when I'm going
I
over
feel
them?
like every single time we mentioned them, you were going to.
Oh God,
You're going to slip into it. That's all right.
old habits die hard. So then the I was almost said it again. The Guardians.
It's called
There we
Cleveland.
go.
There you
I
go.
know. Cleveland. There we go. Get my way around it. So theirs kind of got leaked, and then they're kind of like, you know what? F it. Ours
Yep.
got leaked. We're just going to present it anyway.
Yep.
I kind of like these.
I
Like in our text that we were going back and forth with, you said that they're clean, they're
Mhm.
basic, they didn't overdo it, but I like them.
I love them. To me, they're like they have again a retro but modern take on it. I love the stripes going down the
Yes,
sleeves and going down the pants. It's very 1980s Cleveland Indians
there
look,
we
like
go.
you saw in Major League. And I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, that's awesome. I love that. It's simple. Like CLE, like we've seen it in every Cleveland sport. That's the abbreviation. It's easy. It makes sense. It's not difficult, but like you still have all those artistic little blends in there as well. And I don't know how you feel about the hat, Matt, but I'm actually really enjoying the hat. I almost wish that was the hat they rolled with more of the time. Because again, it has that kind of retro feel to it. And you know how I feel about the three panels. It's one of my favorite looks. I love the tricolor in hats. It's quality. I like it a lot.
I'll have to see the hats in person. I don't like the C block logo at all. To me, that's completely lacks all creativity.
Yeah.
What I what I really do like on the inside of the hat again, if you can see in the picture, you have the sweatband is actually the same piping that they have on the legs, which
Yep.
was the homage to like the 1990s teams.
This is very
Like, I
cool.
like that a lot. I'm just not a huge fan of the basic white panel.
Mhm.
Like you brought up Major League, how awesome would it have been if they had like the Wild Thing logo that they use for like Major League? They put that as their logo.
Or Matt, what if they took the head of one of those guardian statues and
Yes.
put that on the hat to kind of like not not mimic Chief Wahoo, but like that same concept, like putting the logo on the hat. Besides the letter, make an actual logo. Use the guardian head, make it look angry or whatever. Like have fire coming out of it. I don't know. Again, I don't really know what a guardian is. Make it look however you want. Make it look cool. Put that on the hat, and then you have something like you can work with there.
They actually said as part of like their media briefing that since they just had a new identity transforming from the Indians to the Guardians, like their logo is not synonymous right now with like Cleveland and the Guardians. So they didn't really want to like mess with like muddling their identity. That's why they wanted to stay true to pretty much like the colors. They're a little bit more bold than what's their actual color palette, but
Mhm.
they didn't want to like basically like muddle their image right now because it's so new. So they're like, we want to stay somewhat traditional with what we have as like our logo to represent us. That's why they didn't really
But I feel
modify
like
it too much.
nobody likes their image.
I agree.
Again, I have no problem with them moving on from the Indians. It's fine. It's great. But like you're the one who chose this Guardians name. So how about you just make it work or pick something else? Like to me that doesn't make a lot of sense that being their statement. Like we don't want to mess with something that our fans already don't like and no one takes seriously. So this would be the time to actually meddle, try to convince us that this is going to work going forward. And like this was your opportunity to do so, but you're just sticking with the same thing. Again, I like the hat, I like the jerseys. Still not really hot on the Guardians
I
just
wish that
yet.
they wrote like the land. I like the land better than
Yep.
CLE. There's like little subtleties. Again, not the
Mhm.
worst thing that could end up happening,
Yep.
but I mean, we'll see what it looks like on field. And again, I
Yep.
just it's whatever. Like, am I going to go out and buy this? No. And to me, that's like a telltale statement of like you missed the ball. I
Yeah.
just and then you sent this to me today.
Hmm.
So apparently, now I couldn't find anything about like the Dodgers potentially releasing a second one. Their first City Connect was god awful, the
Yes, it
solid
was.
blue, and then
Yep.
you just look like the that one character from Willy Wonka.
Mhm.
And I was like, I don't understand this. So I was trying to do a little bit of digging today. So you have Los Angeles written across the chest. You have some sort of like strike through, and I'm like, is that going to be like a shooting star because of like Hollywood?
Yep.
You have like this off-white base, and it kind of looks like funfetti cake to
Yeah.
me with like the sprinkling on it, and that's the
Yep.
only thing I kept on focusing on. Like, did you get into a fight with a paintbrush? Like, is that what you're going with here? I'm sure they'll have some like media, like mumba jumba. That's like the reasoning behind it, but I don't know. What I did think
I
the
I
best thing.
I kind of
Go
like
ahead.
it. I kind of like it.
It's different. What I
Yes.
love. Can you see like the logo, the LA logo on the sleeve?
Yes.
So the fact that they incorporated like a bigger D from the Dodgers D and have the LA encompassing or inside of it,
It's pretty
I like
cool.
that. That to me is
Yes.
a very good. The
Yep.
other logo on the other patch looks like it's just like an LA with the right in a red patch.
Yeah, I
I
can see that.
understand what that's for. I'll be interested if this actually ends up being their real second City Connect because it's like, okay, is this what we're going to start doing now? I know the Nationals, this is the last year for the Cherry Blossom. So maybe I don't think the Dodgers wore their all blue at all this year yet. So maybe this is going to be their next league. I don't know.
I
It's
like
not
it.
the worst thing. I would like to see what hat they end up going with.
I hope they actually use that logo on the sleeve for the hat.
Yeah.
Like again, the LA's iconic. You don't need to be too creative. I like the D wrapped around it. It looks good. Just go with that and keep it simple. And again, people I think will appreciate that.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
people don't like simple. Simple doesn't sell. All right, so that was the uniform updates
All right.
for the week.
All right, so let's go ahead and round second here. So this idea of coast to coast, actually, Matt, you go back real quick. All right, so the idea of coast to coast is again, the NBA playoffs are going on, and I love how they do the Eastern and Western Conference. I think this is something you and I have talked about before too. It's one of the things I love. I've heard it years ago about what if Major League Baseball shifted to this as well. Get rid of the American and National League. I know it's tradition. I don't keep calling it that. I don't care. But like, wouldn't it be cool if you had like an all Eastern league and an all Western league? And like the Yankees were always playing the Mets and the Red Sox were always playing the Mets and all these geographic rivalries that we have and that we love. Now you get to see a little bit more often. Like I hate the fact that the Mets and the Yankees only play each other 4 times. And it's 2 games at City, and then a month later, it's 2 games at Yankee Stadium. Why can't we just have 2 3 game sets? Why are we asking to? Why is that too much to ask? Like, no other sport does it like this. Have your big markets, play your big markets more often. It's fun. People want to see it. Do it more. So I was thinking about that again over the weekend. And I started thinking, okay, all the different storylines we have now in the sport of baseball. Wouldn't it be cool if we did like a coast to coast? If I picked what coast I'd want to be on for my answer. But it's not just East Coast and West Coast. I mean, it's the heartland that also makes up this country as well. So we're going to do the East Coast, the middle, and West Coast. And we're going to go through some topics here and discuss what I like. So go ahead.
It seems to me that it would make so much more sense travel-wise
Oh my God,
too.
yeah.
Like,
Yes.
why?
And you're almost always ensuring that you have one East Coast team
Yep.
and one West Coast team in the World Series, which is going to be better for ratings. Because if it's just two East Coast teams, the West Coast is not going to care. And if it's two West Coast teams, the East Coast really isn't going to care that much. So again, baseball is incredibly tribal. It's incredibly
Mhm.
regional.
Yep.
So make the most of it. But I digress.
And I like the fact that there would always be a game on at like 10 o'clock at night when you're going to bed, guaranteed.
Yep. All right, so coast to coast. Which starter will have a better career? We got to see Paul Skeens debut over the weekend. We saw another phenomenal start by Christian Scott. And Yamamoto has seemed to like really figure things out, which is great for the Dodgers. It's great for baseball, great for him. But if the question is, which starter will have the better career? My heart's going to stay in the heartland, and that's going to be Paul Skeens. It was one outing. It rained. He walked some guys. It was far from flawless. But this kid is a man who's pitching amongst boys. I mean, this guy has it all. He has the moxie on the mound. He has this untouchable stuff. His movement, his motion is so fluid. It's
Effortless.
so natural. He's not one of these max effort guys. I'm telling you, I look at him and I go, that's Justin Verlander with horizontal movement.
I
Like
thought
that's
Garrett
just
Cole. Yeah.
yeah, that's just who he is. He is going to be unhittable when he settles in. I'm watching this guy and I go, it's hard to do. I mean, there's a lot of great young players in the sport, but I'm looking at him going, this is a Hall of Famer. This is what a Hall of
Whoa.
Famer looks like.
Whoa.
I know it's not something typically you say this early on, but I'm sorry, Matt. Barring major injury, I don't know how this guy in less than 2 years is not the best pitcher in the sport. By the end of 2025, he should be the best pitcher in the sport.
Can I tell
That's
you
how
why
good
he's
I think
not?
Paul Skeens is. Don't say because he's on the Pirates. Don't say it's because he's on the Pirates.
I like the Pirate. I think the Pirates' future is that front end of the rotation
Mhm.
is going to be dirty. I just feel like you can never put all your eggs into the basket of somebody that throws 100 miles an hour because we know history is on our side. Like, and we talked about this earlier. Why were they wasting any ammunition he had in his arm
I
in the
agree.
minor leagues?
I get it.
You've got a certain amount of bullets in there. Use them in the majors.
I get
It's
it.
only a ticking time bomb until he's going to go underneath the knife.
But man,
I
I think and listen, because they all do, and I get it. But if you look at his build, you look at his frame, and you look at his motion, this is what you'd want out of a pitcher. These max effort guys who are throwing 100 all the time. Jacob DeGrom does not have the body to be throwing 100 miles per hour all the time.
Do you got a thing against
The,
skinny people?
well, but Matt, but that's the thing. There's a reason why guys like Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine did not throw in the upper 90s because it's too much on their arms, it's too much on their bodies. But guys like Randy Johnson, guys like Nolan Ryan, and that's who I see a lot with
Yeah.
Paul Skeens too, in terms of this effortless motion and the ball just naturally coming out of his hand. He reminds me a lot of Nolan Ryan. And Nolan Ryan was a guy who pitched for 25 plus seasons. So 22 plus seasons. So when I look at Paul Skeens now, I'm not saying he's going to pitch for 20 plus seasons, but do I see him having a decade of dominance in the sport? If there's one guy I had to put money on to have that, after what I saw, again, I followed Paul Skeens in college. You know, I watched a couple of those minor league starts. This guy is literally built different. And if his floor is he's Steven Strasburg,
That's exactly who I was just going to bring up.
but again, I think that's his floor. If he can avoid the major injuries like Strasburg did, then he is going to go on and do what Strasburg should still be doing if it wasn't for injury, and that was dominating the sport. So I do. I really like Paul Skeens. I think he's just one of those guys. And I think Yamamoto and Christian Scott could have great careers, absolutely great careers. Paul Skeens is built different.
Just
And I
even
think he's that guy.
look at the pictures that you put. Look at the max effort that Christian Scott is doing, and his max velo is probably like 96.
Yep.
Look at the torque on the arm,
It
even like his
worries me.
pace. It does work. But
Yep.
I will say it's a W for the Mets for the fact that Christian Scott gets onto this list with those two other guys.
Mhm.
I didn't even really know of him until like last year. What was he, like a 5th-round pick?
Yep.
And all of a sudden it's like, wow, the Mets are actually developing pitching. Like that's what they do. And to
Yep.
get him onto this list, I think that's a win for the Mets.
Okay.
I always worry about, at least with Skeens, it's like you're not putting $300 million into his arm like you did with Yamamoto. That's like the only positive, I think. He just scares me. He scares me half to death. I like the motion. It just seems so compact, and he can
But yeah,
just
but
redo it every
Yamamoto
time.
throws hard. Yamamoto's a max effort guy. I mean, you watch it. I mean, a lot of the Japanese pitchers, especially the smaller frame guys, they appear like max effort guys. Like, you don't think he has the same possibility of getting hurt like Skeens does?
Oh, I think they all do, and I think it's all a ticking time bomb until they do. I didn't really look at his mechanics like that much. I wonder if he does like the inverted W, which they always talk about, that puts that extra torque on the arm.
Mhm.
But again, his average velo, I think for the first start was like over 100 miles an hour. I think it was like 100.1 miles per
Yeah.
hour.
Yep.
I hope it lasts. I hope for
Yep.
Pittsburgh's sake it lasts. I
Mhm.
hope for us, because it felt like Strasburg again, where it was like, okay, this is much watch. I was watching the Mets game and they were actually cutting to him during the games. How
Yep.
many times do you cut to a Pirates game in the middle of May? Never. And
Very
I was like,
rarely.
this is like appointment watch TV.
Yep.
You've got his girlfriend being like
Libby
the
Dunn, yeah.
social presence that she
Yep.
has. There's
Mhm.
so much wrapped up into him. I don't know what he really has as like a personality. I saw him throwing like footballs at LSU into the crowd. I'm like, maybe this is a guy that they can market to the broad audience where you can get in generic people to watch these games to fill in PNC.
Yep.
I'm hoping he stays healthy.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just not holding my breath if I'm the GM of a team thinking like this guy's throwing 100, he's going to throw for 10 years. I'm not banking on that at all.
It might be the new baseball that we have to get accustomed to, that the days of aces are not that they're gone, but the aces for a decade plus, those days are gone. But I think every now and then in the sport of baseball, especially, it goes through a cycle. It goes through a little, at times, even a revolution. And again, I've hyped him up enough, but this is one of those guys I think can challenge or change the way people think. I think right now, right, we are settled into, especially because of this season, all the big names who are now on the shelf, all these aces and all these arm injuries because of the plethora of reasons that we could get into. And then you see Paul Skeens, you see how he throws, and it's just looks and feels different to me. And I think that's why I'm so excited the fact that he's up. I'm so excited he performed the way he did. I mean, the hype is now matching the talent. And again, it's the first outing. It wasn't sharp. He walked some guys. It was raining. It was whatever. Um, every hitter looked uncomfortable facing him. Every single hitter looked uncomfortable facing him.
Do you
And I
have
think,
Passon? This is unbelievable. Do you have Passon as an alert on Twitter?
oh God, why did Pete get traded?
No.
Uh,
Skeens is scratched from his next start for elbow soreness.
see, this is not fair. See, this is not fair. See, here I am.
I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm
I'm,
kidding.
are you serious?
I'm
Wow.
kidding. That was a joke.
I mean, you would never get another bold statement from me on this podcast again if that is what happened there. That's messed up.
That'd
That's
be
all
like the
kinds of messed up.
broadcaster curse times like a billion.
Oh my God, I know, man. That was awful. I can't believe you just did
But
that.
see, you weren't surprised at all.
Well, no, because you said Jeff Passan. I mean, you weren't giving me Andy Martino. I have a problem with Andy Martino. Passan tweets out, yeah, I'm gonna be hyper alert here.
Gotcha.
Unbelievable. All right, next one. Okay. Which franchise will win their next World Series first? Wow. I mean, I'll tell you, baseball loses something when the Red Sox, the Giants, and the Cardinals are as irrelevant as they are right now. Now, listen, if you're part of Red Sox Nation, I get it. If you're like, hey, we're still there. We're right at 500. Our pitching's been really good. You look at that Boston offense. I think Connor Wong's sitting third in their lineup today against Tampa Bay. I mean, this is not an offense that can sustain success at all. This is, again, a franchise who's not spending any money either. Their ownership's not interested in winning a World Series. Guys, you ain't winning a World Series. You look at they finally went out there, spent a lot of money. They're floundering. They don't look, yeah, they still feel old. The pitching hasn't been as good as we thought it was going to be. And then you just have the dumpster fire that is the St. Louis Cardinals. And I think at this point right now, I'm going to stay again in Middle America and say the Cardinals. I'm sorry, they're not going to be the next one to win their next World Series. If I had to put faith in either one of these three franchises, I'm going to go out West Coast. I'm going to say it's the Giants. And here's why. I still like what the pitching could be for San Francisco in the next year or two. I think Logan Webb is still an ace. You don't know what you're going to get with Robbie Ray when he comes back. I still like Kyle Harrison and what he offers. And I still think the Giants are one more big signing away to being that relevant team again. I think I'm trying to be as optimistic as I can for you Giant fans out there. But when I compare you to the other two, you're going to come off looking really great with this. I still believe in trusting the back of the baseball card. Jorge Soler is going to hit at some point. I think, what you have found again in Conforto is still valuable.
But he's
There are,
hurt.
yeah, I know, but there's still these guys that can be guys. I think they're just one big guy away. One impact bat that gets this team clicking and possibly being competitive again. But even nonetheless, I think the Giants are still way more interested in winning than the other two franchises. Now, I'll give the Cardinals a little bit of credit. They did sign Arenado. They did sign Goldschmidt. They went outside 3 starters. They did trust their young guys, but nothing is working in St. Louis. None of these young guys are popping. Goldschmidt is now doing his best Jose Abreu
Oh
impersonation.
God, awful.
Arenado is not hitting for any kind of power at all. This Cardinals team, and they were talking about it on the Just Baseball podcast about how difficult, almost impossible it would be for the Cardinals right now to just blow up the whole thing and start over, because you can throw Goldschmidt out there. Who's trading for him? You can throw Arenado out there. Who's picking up that contract? Outside of those two guys, what pieces do you have to trade? I mean, Jordan Walker got sent back down to AAA. Incredibly inconsistent. Carlson, not that guy. Lars, great guy to have in your team, not a significant enough bet. Mason Wynn, really young. Ivan Herrera, okay, he's good potential catcher, but you put all these pieces together, you would think it would be somewhat of a competitive team in the NL Central, and they're cellar dwellers. And I think the ownership has to be looking at themselves going, what do we do? I mean, people keep forgetting that, was it 4 or 5 years ago, Randy Arozarena and Adolis Garcia were on this team. They were prospects in this system. They moved on to keep these prospects. And listen, sometimes you swing and you miss. That's the game with prospects. Every franchise has made a mistake before. But those are two ginormous mistakes, letting Arozarena and Adolis Garcia go. And you replace them with two aging veteran hitters who are not hitting. This is a really bad situation. And I'll keep it nice and short with Boston. If John Henry continues being their owner, if he's not selling this team, I have no idea when the next competitive Red Sox, and when I mean competitive, I mean World Series competitive team is going to be. I feel terrible for Boston fans. They're like the Mets of the AL East. You have this pitching you didn't expect you were going to get. Now, if the offense could just do something to make this team a competitor in AL East, it would be something amazing to see, but the help ain't coming anytime soon.
I don't think they're the Mets at all. I think the Mets are legit. Like, they might not be putting on the full contender this year. I have no idea what the Red Sox front office is doing. They're not investing. They're not building the farm system. I'm like, are you so hung up with Liverpool where you're just I don't care what's going on with the. I don't understand it at all.
I will say they're actually pretty obsessive about their farm system. That's why they didn't move on from guys like Bobby Dahlback or oh my God, names just keeps going in and out of my head. But Bobby Dahlbeck, I can go on and name some other ones if my brain would actually work tonight. But they have Marcelo Meyer down there that they really like. They have Roman Anthony down there that they really like. They have Kyle Teal, the catcher, who they really like as well. But they've had other guys they've really liked as well that have not worked out. Casas was pretty good until his injury. Jarren Duran has a function. He's like the brand Nimmo, if you will, for the Red Sox right now. When he's hot, he's great. When he's not, it's bad. But there's just not enough. There's just not enough there. They're so focused on these young guys, and they don't want to spend money in free agency anymore. It's a real letdown from the Red Sox, the way we've understood the Red Sox and how they operate. Those days are gone. Those days of being, competing with the evil empire, going after big name free agents, those days are gone. And now the Red Sox are starting to look like a team that, okay, this is what the poor teams do. This is how the poor teams operate. You're the Red Sox. You sell that place all the time. But now you start looking at home games at Fenway, there's a lot of empty seats. People are not going to pay money to see an ownership group that does not have any interest in winning.
And being in that division where the Rays can be cheap and there's still going to be a 90-game winner, I mean, the Blue Jays, that's a very tough. This to me is like the definition of mid, as the kids would say.
Yep.
Where as bad as things may seem for the Mets, like these teams are both mid and boring, and the Cardinals are downright bad.
Yep.
I don't even know how you pick out of this. It's pretty much like a blindfold. I'm going to go with the Red Sox on pedigree.
Yeah.
But again, am I feeling confident with that at all? No. To me, the Giants were even boring when they were winning World Series. They were just their offense was boring.
But that's why I still have a little bit more faith in them. They don't have to be, again, this sexy team to go and win World Series. I think they have guys there who are still competing at a very high level. They're just a couple like big guys away from really being relevant.
Pete Alonso. Put him out there.
Yeah. Move on. All right. Which team is not that bad? Now, let me preference this because I don't think anyone expected the Brewers to be like A's bad this year or Nationals bad this year. But I think people can honestly say that they didn't expect the Brewers to be this much better than everyone else in the NL Central. So out of these three teams, which one are you looking at going, hey, they're not that bad? Because we thought the A's were going to be the bottom of the AL West. We thought the Nationals were going to be the bottom of the NL East. We thought the Brewers were going to probably be competitive, middle of the pack. They'll maybe contend for the NL Central, but not this good. Not at the top of the division. Clearly better than more than half of the teams in that division. So which team is not that bad? And I'll tell you, because I heard, again, people say how the A's were not going to be as bad as people thought. Like they did have a decent enough roster where they were going to win more than I think Vegas had at like 56 wins for the season. And people were really hammering that over. I did not hear anyone, maybe with the exception of Matt Goebel, talk that optimistically about the Washington Nationals. And the fact that they're a 500 team right now, I love CJ Abrams. He's becoming one of those guys. They're getting some quality starts from that rotation as well. They got more young guys on the way. Dylan Cruz is not far. James Wood, not far. They got guys coming. And the national timeline might be accelerating a little bit. All three, I'm staying on the East Coast. I think the Nationals are not that bad.
Can I put a hot take in?
Sure.
Do you think the Nationals won the Juan Soto trade?
Okay. You know what? I will say they did not win the trade, but when you trade a superstar, I mean, look at the Red Sox and how they traded Mookie Betts. They clearly lost that trade. Yeah. The fact that the Padres were able to get something salvageable back, especially that salvageable piece being CJ Abrams, I think, then to me, both teams win. I don't think there has to be a clear winner and a loser in a trade. I think there are times both teams can do well. And I think in the case of the Nationals, They weren't going to be able to give Soto what he wanted monetarily. They had to move on for him. You had to get something back. The fact that you were able to get one all-star piece back, good for the Nationals. I think they won, and I think the Padres won.
James Wood reminds me so much. What was the name of the guy that actually played for the National switch hitter? He played for the Pirates. He had the dreadlocks, first baseman, big guy. What was his name?
Josh Bell.
Josh Bell. Yes,
Yep.
reminds me so much. Even like the swing reminds me so much of him.
Yep.
In that trade, when you realize you're not going to be able to keep Soto, and that's the whole. Like, is CJ Abrams like a top 5 shortstop in the game right now?
Right now he is, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, to me, it's just like the fact that they are 500 right now, and I thought they were going to be putrid. It's just completely. I was kind of thinking the Brewers going to be 5 games above 500, but for me, just the Nationals, the fact that they are treading water and they're only going to get better. To me, it just seems like they are an ascending team when, like, they have future, they have youth, they have speed, they have everything like set up. I did not see that coming. I'm just.
They need a little more pitching. They're going to need more pitching. But again, they have
Gore is a stud.
Yeah, Mackenzie Gore's starting to figure it out, which is awesome. Again, another great piece they got in that trade.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and that's great. They're gonna, but this is also an ownership group who doesn't mind spending money. They were ready to give Soto millions upon millions of dollars. Soto didn't. He thought he was going to get more. So I think that's the real X factor with this franchise. Again, is the ownership group. When that team's ready to spend money again, Washington's going to be spending money. And that's, I think, that's when that team is going to take off.
And you think about all the players that the Nationals lost over the last, 5 years, from Harper, Rendon, like the amount of talent that they lost Soto, and to be able to just
Strasburg to injury, Scherzer to free agency, Patrick Corbin to injury,
and being awful. And they can just somehow, they treaded water. They were bad for a couple years, tread water. And it's like, okay, we're the ascending team now.
You know, Matt, right here on Hats and Bats, I want you to just go ahead and I want you to admit this. You have a major soft spot for the Washington Nationals. Like, I would even, argue that you have this secret love for them that you don't want anyone to know about. They're kind of like a team. Tell me I'm wrong.
There's a little bit of a crush. We're flirting a little bit right now. We're sending messages to each other through like DMs. I'm trying to go out on a couple dates, and I keep on getting turned down because I'm the old man and they're the young. Well, that's not really a good analogy that I wanted to use. I was going to say I'm the old man. No, I'm not going to go in that direction.
You're the old man and they're the older woman.
And they're the older woman. Yes, that's exactly right. Yep, that's the direction I was going. And I just, again, like, you see the pieces and you can see what they're doing, where it's like, okay, we realize we're not going to win the World Series this year. We realized we weren't going to be able to hold on to these players. We're going to get as much as we physically can. Well, we're going to get lambasted when we trade Soto after losing everybody else that we've lost. But watch out in a couple of years, because our player development, our scouting, our be able to pick out players from another team and be like, okay, that's what we're going for.
Yep.
It just completely recycles the entire franchise.
If you left the Mets, if you divorced the Mets, they gave Pete a 15-year, $500 million contract. I think that would be the final straw for you. Would you go to the Nationals?
I don't think so. There's another team I like a little bit more. There's another girl I'm sliding in her DMs.
Whoa, who's that? Who's that?
She sent me some provocative photos that's keeping me intrigued.
Wow, this is getting really X-rated. What team is that?
What team is a very sexy team that is a fun team to watch on a night in, night out basis? The stadium is rocking. It's just a team where you're like, I can see that team winning the World Series, and they're a bunch of dudes.
Is it in the NL East?
It's in the NL East.
Yeah, so it's the Phillies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And this is
so much love you have for our rivals, Matt.
And this is like the ultimate compliment, where it's like, I hate them because I wish I was them.
Yep.
It's like everything that they've done, like that ballpark is a fortress. They've won. They continue to win. The Mets were like, no, Wheeler, you're not good enough for us. Wheeler's now top 2 in baseball. Yeah. Still dominating, best I've ever seen him throw. It's just some teams seem to get it. They plug in the pieces. You get a Schwarber, a Castellanos. Like, these teams just, you fit these pieces. You have Trey Turner go down. You don't miss a beat. Like, Lindor goes down, season's over. They
Yeah.
just seem to there's just some teams where you root for them because I hate them, but I appreciate. I hate Harper. I think he's a D-bag, but I like the fact that I hate him. It's like you're corny. You wear Philly Fanatic stuff. Like I'm not wearing Mr. Met stuff. But again, the guy rakes when the time comes. He
Yep.
wants to play. He loves the
And
city.
And again, I think that's just because you're a fan of the game. You're a fan of
Yeah.
baseball. Like you can appreciate greatness outside of your team colors. I think that's important. I think more baseball fans, especially fans from New York, should embrace that more as well. I have my own team as well. It's not because they're doing anything great. I'm wondering though, can you guess who that team is?
Are they an American League Central team?
They are not. I'm not wearing that hat.
Oh,
Not wearing the hat. But it's a team I've had a fling with in the past
is it
that
the Rays?
it's not the Rays either.
American League?
It's NL West.
He Diamondbacks, Rockies?
Rockies. There's
Really?
something about the guys that have gone through the Rockies that I have this, I don't know, this appreciation of, like this kind of like this tribe the Rockies are. They're in a park that doesn't work, but they're also in this park that creates some great offensive talent or production, however you want to word it. But like there have been so many guys that go through the Rockies that I just absolutely love. Last week I talked about Andres Galarraga. I loved Galarraga. I also loved Larry Walker, Dante Bichette, and Todd Helton. And like, you know, I love Chuck Nasty. I loved Carlos Gonzalez. Like, there's so many of these guys. Like, again, I'm in the backyard. I'm emulating their swings as well. I love Nolan Jones right now, and he's gotten off to a pretty mediocre start in Colorado. But what he was doing last year, his story where Cleveland threw him away, basically gave him up for nothing because they said he couldn't hit, and now he's doing this in Colorado. I love players who can make it in Colorado. And this is gonna be a nice segue into our next segment here, which is gonna be digging for third, where we talk about our bucket list stadiums. I think they have a tremendous. Just go right to it. I think, yeah, it's the first one. This is on my bucket list. There is something about Coors Field that I want to be a part of. It is a gorgeous stadium, and when that place is rocking, because listen, the Rockies have made the playoffs before. We've seen this home environment. They've gone as far as the World Series in 2007. I think Denver, Colorado in general is a great pro sports team, town, city, state. They show out when their teams are good. And it's the purple, it's the black. Look at that backdrop. It's absolutely gorgeous. Like this is such I think a fun environment. Like minor league teams. The fact that okay, you don't care if they win or lose, just going to the ballpark and being a part of it. Like taking it all in. I talk about this all the time, like why every single person I feel like should love baseball. It's just so good on the senses, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the taste of the food, everything. And it's like if you like being outside, it makes no sense that you're not a baseball fan. No sense to me. You don't have to have a rooting interest. Just go and enjoy yourself. And Coors Field has always looked like that stadium to me. I love the logos, I love the hats, I love the jerseys, I love the players that have gone through there. They don't win a lot. They definitely don't win a lot. But I think when they do win, it makes it that much sweeter. And the very, very, bottom of it, you're going to have, I think, a great experience at Coors Field. I can't wait to go. I want to go so bad. Love Coors Field.
I think nostalgia is one hell of a drug, and you are like ODing on it
Oh my
because
God. I do. I love the Rockies. I do. I love everything Ellis Burks. There's another one. Ellis Burks. Loved Ellis Burks back in the day.
Dante Bichette,
Oh
Larry
my
Walker's not walking through that door.
Oh my God. Troy Tulowitzki. Even LeMahieu before he went to the Yankees. Like, oh, I loved it. Like anyone who succeeds in Colorado, I am instantly like one of your biggest fans outside of Colorado.
The coolest thing about Colorado is the fact that they have like the Rockies built into their
Mhm.
jumbotron in left
Yep.
field. I always thought that
Gorgeous.
was like so ingenious, so clever,
Gorgeous.
so
Yep.
smart. The
Gorgeous.
backdrop is beautiful as
Yep.
well. Christina's cousin actually lives out in Colorado,
Oh,
and
no
he's
kidding.
gone to Coors Field. And he just says it's like absolutely beautiful. Colorado is just a complete vibe. There's just a vibe to
Yeah.
Colorado. Like
Yes.
it's just I can't go against you there. Just the fact that you're flirting with Colorado though, that's like you're flirting with like a 2.
There you go. Right
You're the one.
there. This looks natural to me.
I
This
feel like
really does.
I feel like we're drunk. You're drunk at the bar, and you're hitting at a 2 at the end of the night. And I'm like, Kev, we got to go home. And you're like, stop blocking me, man. Stop blocking me. And I'm like, you're not gonna want this in the morning. You're gonna wake up. You're gonna have your item itching, and you're
Let,
like, what did I do?
man, you're getting really R-rated on this podcast today.
Trying to keep it PG.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I will say, like, listen, I'm a Mets fan. We don't win much. So really, what would be the difference in being a Rockies fan?
True.
I'm not saying I'm making the switch. I'm just saying. All right.
Be,
I'm not exactly losing anything if I went from the Mets to the Rockies.
You could be purple. You can just live in your purple.
Exactly.
All right, so I'll take your sexy and I'll raise you up another level. So if you're sitting there and like I would say Coors Field is probably like a solid 7.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a 10, and there's no doubting it whatsoever. Probably the prettiest ballpark in all of baseball.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
From a aesthetic standpoint, from the backdrop, this would probably be the stadium where if we actually got to go to and I didn't have a little bit of a medical issue where we should have gone.
You and me both, buddy.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, that was crazy. So
like,
a little backstory here. Last year, Matt and I and Matt's wife Christina, our friend Mike, his wife Muti, we were all going to be going to PNC Park to check out the stadium. And Matt had a medical issue. I had a medical issue. We were basically like days away. We were both in the hospital.
Yeah.
Yours was definitely more severe. Thankfully, everything's good between you and me. But it was weird. It was like weird how this all kind of like went down. But we do have to get back to PNC. We have to try to get there.
And I think when we were actually like looking to like what we were going to do, I think we said we wanted to get seats like in the upper deck behind home plate.
Yeah.
Just so we can see like the Allegheny River. We can see the downtown Pittsburgh skyline.
Yep.
Like the fact that they walk across the Roberto Clemente Bridge to like get into the stadium. It's just right there, downtown Pittsburgh, the heart of Pittsburgh. Yep. To me, it's just the absolute most beautiful stadium that there possibly is. It's the black. It's the yellow. It's those contrasting colors. And it's like the subtle little like homage that they give to Roberto Clemente throughout with like the 21-foot wall in right field, paying homage to his like number. Yep. It just, when it first opened in 2001, I remember baseball was very like cookie cutter, where we had like the enclosed stadiums. It was really once like Oracle came in, PNC came in, pretty much like Camden Yards like set the tone where we're like, we're not these generic stadiums anymore. We're gonna have personality.
They went back to being parks and not stadiums. That is the key. And I think every new stadium or park that's come out has figured that out. I think there's 2 revolutionary things that have happened in the last 20 years in ballparks is when PNC and Oracle came out to transition from the stadium experience to the park experience.
Yep.
And when Truist Field came out, and we're going to go to that, I believe that's one of the next ones, the idea of incorporating all the park features around the park as well. Breweries, restaurants, nightlife, things to do outside of actually watching the ball game itself to make it a true experience rather than just 4 or 5 hours at a ball game.
And you're telling me that Citi Field being around a whole chop shop situation, like that's not some place you want to go walking around?
Well, but again, in what, 10 years is going to look completely different because Cohen's sinking billions of dollars into that project to make Citi Field a real attraction. And everything around it is going to be a place you want to go and walk around and hang out. Absolutely.
And I love the fact that, like, again, with like Oracle, you incorporate your physical surroundings where you have McCovey Cove, you've got downtown Pittsburgh, making that part of the experience. Like, how awesome it would be. Like, I know you can't do it, but if you could see like the New York City skyline from like the upper deck, like that to me, it's just like baseball is poetry. Baseball is like beautiful. Like adding these little elements is what makes it beautiful.
Absolutely.
PNC Park to me is by far one of the best. So we kind of like hit on Oracle.
Yeah, I'll just be quick. Again, just like everything you said about PNC, that's exactly what I would say about Oracle Park. It's number one actually on my bucket list is to get to Oracle Park. Absolutely every time of year. And San Francisco, that's a rough climate,
Yeah, I was just
especially
gonna bring
to
that
watch
up.
a baseball game.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that it's able to bring out so many people, I think speaks volumes about the success of this park. Even the Coca-Cola sign in left field, the giant glove, even those kind of fun things they added in there. It's absolutely amazing. Of course, hitting home runs and to into the bay is awesome as well. The Golden Gate Bridge, McCovey Cove, all of it. It's everything works. Everything absolutely works. Love that park. Have to get there. Go on to the next one.
And the fact that it's so gigantic and the fact
Yeah.
that Barry Bonds hit so many home
Oh
runs
my
there,
gosh, insane.
it's absolutely unbelievable to me.
Yep.
All right, so I'm gonna go. We've hit on some newer parks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go to the second oldest park,
Yep.
Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
So Wrigley Field, north side of Chicago, the second oldest at Fenway. When did Dodger Stadium open up? Was it the 50s?
Chavez Ravine was like, yeah, I think 59, 60, something like that.
So I didn't know. So when I was like looking up the history of Wrigley Field, it actually didn't open with the Cubs. It was opened as Wegman Park for the
Yeah.
Chicago Whales of the Federal League,
Yes.
which folded after 1915. I feel
Yep.
like that's right up your alley. Like
Yep.
you're probably like, "Yep, how did you not know that?"
I'm not here to judge. It's okay.
So again, like I'm reading all this stuff and I'm like, I had no idea like the history behind it. But again, when you were talking about like this downtown atmosphere where it's not just the ballpark, you have the bars, you have the shops, you have this whole city basically that revolves around the stadium. Wrigley is that. You have Wrigleyville, you have the Wrigleyville
Yep.
neighborhood. Like it just takes you go out for a day game, and there's something about just Wrigley in the day where
Yep.
you just go, you see the beer cup snakes in the stands.
Yep.
It's like it takes on a personality of itself. When I tell my kids, like with being an English teacher, a lot of my favorite books takes the setting and makes it into a character. That's
Yep.
one of the main reasons
Oh, I
why I
love
loved
that.
Harry
I
Potter
love
because
that. Yes.
it was like Hogwarts is like a character in the story. When
Mhm.
we read of To Kill a Mockingbird, the Great Depression, Alabama, 1933, 1935. Like that is a character in the story.
Like
To
it.
me, you can't tell the story of baseball or the Cubs or the National League without Wrigley Field. The
Yep.
whole idea of like, do you know the reason why they ended up growing ivy in the field? Do you know why they did that?
Yes. Go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
though. No, go
So
ahead.
the owner's son was like, I want to make this look more like a park. So
Mhm.
what they did was they're like, okay, how can we make this look more like a park? They grew ivy. And it
But
was always
wasn't it also to it's also though to soften the blow of the brick wall.
correct, because
Yeah.
with the brick wall behind it, but it was like this whole idea of like we want this to be aesthetically pleasing.
Yes.
Where and I always like remember like when you're watching baseball, it's like you can tell just by watching if it's April, if
Yep.
it's July, or if it's October based on how the ivy looks.
Yep.
Where it's the beginning of the year, it's just the vines. When
Mhm.
it's full summer, you've got the big green vines everywhere. The postseason, the vines, the ivy's turning red. You have the ball going into it. You've got the basket up above the wall.
You
There's just so many quirks and personality with the stadium. It's like you have to go there. You got to go there for a day game.
I would argue one of the coolest things about Wrigley has nothing to do with the park, but like the rooftop seats
Yes.
in the buildings across the street, that is so awesome. I love that. I absolutely like I think that's one of the coolest things, like, people going up to their rooftops. I would love to like have an apartment there for like a
Oh
week
God.
just so I
Can you
could
imagine how
catch
much
out
they
Cubs
cost?
games. I can't imagine, but I would imagine that would be incredibly cool to witness and to be a part of. I absolutely because it's the neighborhood is also part of the park as well, and that's what you're talking about in terms of the character of it. And yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, Wrigley hits on all different levels. It's an awesome park.
But see, I don't know. I would want to play there if I was a player because if you see like the dugouts, if you see like the batting, even though they've done like renovations,
Yeah.
it still shows its age. Where I'd
Oh,
be like,
totally.
I see all these modern amenities that these other
Mhm.
stadiums
Yep.
have, and I'm ducking my head to go down into the clubhouse. I'd be like, yeah, I don't
So like
know.
Fenway Park is not on our list because we've both been to Fenway. These
Yeah.
are parks that we have not been to. Fenway Park has that same vibe. I mean, you go
Mhm.
into Fenway, it's like, oh, okay, this is old. Like how close the seats are. Like
Yeah.
it's not exactly a comfortable experience when you go to Fenway. You feel all the same feels when you go to Wrigley, the tradition, the history, the heritage, all of it. But it's not a comfortable seat. It's not a comfortable experience. But that's not what you're going for. So that's part of the charm of it as well.
And the Cubs, they had their run, they were very good, but even when the Cubs were, like, putrid, like, after Ryan Sandberg, like, that stadium was still sold out all the time, and, like, being, like, a teenager watching those games, like, that's gotta be a heck of a lot of fun to be in the
Yeah.
stands watching those games, even though their teams aren't that great.
Yep. 100%.
So Wrigley.
100%. Like the Rockies.
Yeah.
All right. So
I have to, like, pump the brakes here. Like, give me a break with this.
with what?
With Truist Park?
Are you kidding me?
Oh my god. Explain yourself.
Because look what's on the outside. Exactly what I was saying earlier.
Wait, I
This
see
is a
racists out there doing, like, racist
no, this is
jobs,
a
like
revolutionary park, my friend. And I'm telling you, more and more sports around the world should be copying what Atlanta has done at Truist Park. Washington did it as well. Baltimore has always had this experience that fans, when they go to these games, it brings a different vibe. It brings a different energy. You're not just going to take in a ball game that is the climax of your experience, but it's everything that surrounds it as well. It's like these little mini cities next to the ballpark. You want to talk about building character? It's building a character in the stadium, but what I would argue, it's building yourself a new home. This is create Atlanta is not a great professional sports town at all.
do
And
they
we have
even play in Atlanta now, though? Isn't it, like, Dade County?
yes, it is, but you're missing you're
I'm
missing
just
my
trying to
point.
poo-poo this any way
Yeah,
I can.
you 100% are. This new energy that they have inside of this stadium, Matt, is unlike I think Braves stadiums before. This is what Turner Field missed out on. Turner Field was a gorgeous field, but you do not have the same environment. You do not have the same intensity. You do not have the same experience that you're getting here with Truist Park. All the great luxuries they have around it, again, the restaurants, the different eateries, the beer gardens, all this stuff. This is what people want to do during the summertime. And what Atlanta figured out, and now it's being copied around every new ballpark in the country, and other ballparks are adopting it like Citi Field, like Steve Cohen's trying to do, is when you go outside and you want to go to a nice restaurant, you want to go to a brewery, you want to go to the waterfront, you need to go somewhere else. You come right here to my stadium. You come right here to my park. And everything you want is here. Now, it's so funny because while as the other sports have dominated TV, the NFL, the NBA, what have you, what baseball I think has figured out, whether they want to acknowledge this or not, or whether they just did this by accident, is they are winning the live version of this. They are winning how to revolutionize the sport in terms of the live viewing experience and bringing fans to their ballparks. They may never win the TV rating title again, but in terms of fan experience, I would argue there is nothing better when you go to a place like Truist Park than the fan experience you're going to have at that place. You can go to the dog pound in Cleveland in a big playoff game, and yes, you may see something historic. You're going to freeze your you know what off. You're going to have to sit in a parking lot for hours beforehand. You're going to sit in, crammed seats in a cold stadium. And yes, you may witness history that day. Or you could pay $1 million to go in Madison Square Garden to watch the Knicks from the rafters in the NBA Finals. Although with the Knicks how they're playing right now, that's probably not going to happen. You can do all those things, or you can spend about $200 for a family of 5 to get into the ballpark and sample all this for 5, 6 hours. You'll always have something you can do to be entertained, even if it's not the ball game. And that's the difference. I think that's what baseball is doing so incredibly well. It's not just about the sport anymore. It's about bringing people together and having them all be entertained at all different varying baseball levels of enjoyment.
I
Make
just
sense?
looked yeah, absolutely, and there's a couple of things I'll hit on what you mentioned. So the Braves are the 4th highest daily attendance for baseball games, a tick under 38,000. You have the Dodgers being first at 46, but then you have the Padres, downtown San Diego. You have the Phillies, downtown Philadelphia. You have the Braves, what you're talking about, this whole commercial area around it. You've got the Yankees, the Cardinals, the Cubs, all of these places where it's like the baseball stadium is like the epicenter, but you have all these surrounding areas, places to do things. Christina, we were celebrating Mother's Day yesterday with like her family, and we were actually talking previously about like going down to a Mets game.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to her, I'm like, look, I don't know if I want to drive 3 hours down to the stadium, drive 3 hours back, pay for parking, pay for tickets to go for a 2 hour game with the way the pitch clock is set everything up. To me, that's not bang for my buck where I'm spending the gas money, $100 for parking, all of that to sit through a 2 hour game. But
For
if
a
I can
3 hour drive, I get it. That makes a lot. That makes sense.
it limits to what I want to do. Do I want to go down there? She's like, well, we can make a day out of it or a couple days out of it by going into New York City. And it's like, okay, then you can justify things. But if I have this like epicenter where it's like, okay, we're gonna go, and I'm not a drinker. Like you're not even like a big drinker. It's not we're going pre-gaming, but it's like, hey, we
Right.
can go walk around. We can see the history of the field. We can see statues. We can see all these different things that bring us in other than the game itself.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think that's what baseball needs to sell. Where
Yeah.
again, where it's romantic. It's not the okay, you're not going to like MetLife where it's like a tuna can and you're watching a football game for 3 hours and then leaving. You want the experience.
Yep.
Like I will never forget my very first time at Shea Stadium. You walk in, you see that green grass from the outfield. It's like life changing. I
It
will
is.
never forget that
It
moment.
is. I
And
know.
there's not that many
Mhm.
experiences like that
Nope.
anymore
Nope.
when you go to certain places, and that's what baseball really needs to
Listen,
sell.
listen. I got to watch Tom Brady at Foxborough. I've got to see him play there twice. It was awesome. And as a diehard Patriot fan, I can tell you, there's nothing like it. But I can remember exact details from the first time I went to Fenway when I was like 8 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, the feel of it, walking up the steps to the stadium. We had great seats, seeing the monster for the first time, right? Seeing grass that green, the players on the field. And I'll tell you, Matt, again, I'm 39 years old and I've been to multiple ballparks. I've been to Citi Field countless times. And I go in there, Matt, I still feel the same way. Like all those feelings I get when I was a child come flooding back into me. Now, baseball obviously is my favorite sport, so maybe I'm a little biased, but it's the experience that it's just second to none. And I think baseball owners are capitalizing on it and they're making it even better.
I completely agree, which segues exactly into my last stadium,
Mhm.
which again I'm flirting
It's
heavily
awesome.
with.
I've been there. It's awesome.
So for to me, it's not even like the aesthetics, even though it's like again this modernized stadium. When this stadium gets rocking, now I'm going to try this, see if I can actually get this to go.
Okay.
To me, like this, every time I watch it, complete goosebumps. So this is the wild card games against
Yep.
the Marlins.
Yep.
The walk up song.
Yep. Yep.
The
You know, it's
fact
this
that they
mellow
continue
song.
singing.
It's like a war chant, and when everyone's doing it, I can't imagine, eh, being the pitcher, being in the Marlins, going, "Dude, we lost. It's over. It's got we can't." It's like having a 10th player.
It's
It's incredible.
It's absolutely insane to me. And again, that's part of like the Philly fans where I
Mhm,
don't know if I would ever want to be wearing the other team's garb when I walk into there.
mhm.
But if you are one of them, you've got to feel like a Colt. You're the 10th man on the field and you're the one that's like giving them a bump.
Yep.
That to me, if you go into there as a Philly fan and you get to witness something like that, even some of their like May games that I've been watching, like this stadium is rocking.
Yep.
Like they love their sports. It's a complete atmosphere just being in there.
So did I tell the story on this pod? My time going to Citizens Bank.
I knew where you got sick after walking in the extreme
Oh
heat.
my gosh! So our friend Mike has this great. So we went to Philly. We are gonna check out a Phillies game, and it was awesome. But what led up to it, I should have died. Seriously, like my body should have imploded.
No hyperbole.
We decided that we were going to walk from our hotel to the famous like dueling cheesesteak place in Philadelphia with the two cheesesteak places across the street from one another. And again, I don't know why I don't write more of these things down. But I didn't think I was going to tell this story though either. So we get our cheesesteaks. It's like 95 degrees. I'm
Bad
eating
combo.
a whole cheesesteak with cheese whiz and onions on this thing.
That's not what you say though. You guys say whiz wit, right? Isn't that the correct vocabulary?
Sure. Was it all of this? I mean, it was amazing. I mean, and we house these things. Now, from the hotel to the cheesesteak place was about a solid mile and a half, 2 miles. We got like another 2-ish miles to go to Citizen Bank. Now, I know if Mike ever texted or watches, he said he would say it's like a 3-mile walk. No way. I'm factoring the heat. I'm factoring the cheesesteak sandwich in my stomach. This was a 30-mile hike from my hotel to Citizens Bank. We're walking, and all of a sudden we see this Italian little like bakery, and he's like, "We have to go in." I'm like, "All right, let's go ahead." And he goes, "What are you getting?" I'm like, "What am I getting?" Like, we're going to the stadium. He's like, "Yeah, no, but we gotta get something. Like, we just walked in here. Let's get something." So I get a cannoli. We eat our cannolis.
You say that very Italian.
Well, I mean, look at me.
A
I'm very
cannoli.
Italian. I'm very Italian. Yeah, exactly. And then we continue our trek in 95-degree heat. Matt, my body overheated. I could not stop sweating.
I'm
We end up
overheating
there's a
thinking about it.
casino. There's a casino right next to Citizens Bank, and I am just profusely sweating like I have never sweat before, just sipping ice water at the bar, trying to get my body to cool off. All the meanwhile, on my hip, because I had been doing yard work the week before, I have poison ivy. And now this thing had spread all across my hip. It was the most miserable experience I would say in the last 10 years I've had in terms of physical, exertion. And I will tell you, we walked in the stadium, Matt, and it was awesome. It was, I will say this, the cleanest professional arena I have ever seen before in my life.
That shocks me.
Hats off to the custodial crew, the maintenance crew at Citizen Bank. Dude, you could have eaten off the floors. That's how clean the bathrooms, everything was amazing. Great ballpark experience. Absolutely loved it there.
So you had the meat sweats, you had poison ivy, you had a cannoli.
At a cannoli. Yes.
90-degree heat.
And I loved the game was amazing. It downpoured at one point. It was like one of those summer storms. And it got super muggy afterwards. We got outside the stadium. I turned to him and I go, "If you think I'm walking back, I swear to God, I'll kill you right here and now." I'm like, we're taking a car back to the hotel. And we did, thankfully.
You should have gotten like a little helmet with the ice cream in it to cool you down. You're probably legit
Oh,
overheated.
no,
Meat
no.
makes me sweat like crazy
No.
anyway.
We got Dippin' Dots. Phenomenal.
Yes,
They
but
had
that
Dippin'
doesn't
Dots.
cool you down.
I don't care. It was great. The Dippin' Dots are awesome. It's outstanding.
Again, that nostalgia is a hell of a drug.
It is. It really is. Loved it. Absolutely
Too
loved
funny.
it. Let's finish this up here. Let's go to our all-time favorite teams. We're going to do our rotations. You guys know what we're doing. This is our all-time favorite teams. We are just picking our favorite players we have watched. So we're not doing anything outside of our time periods here. We're going to work on our 5-man rotation. Let's get it started.
Okay.
Coming home. Greg Maddux.
The professor.
Number one. One of the most unappreciated players, pitchers of all time. I know when we think of all-time great pitchers, we're thinking about the flamethrowers. We're thinking about the Roger Clemens. We're thinking about the Bob Fellers. We're thinking about the Bob Gibson, Sandy Koufax, Pedro Martinez, all those guys. But what makes Maddux so amazing and why I loved him so much, because obviously if you can't tell in the video, I'm not a big guy. I never threw particularly hard. And to watch this guy baffle some of the greatest hitters we've ever seen, topping out at 92, 93 miles per hour, understanding how to pitch, using both sides of the plate, understanding how to set batters up, understanding how to pitch to the non-barrel parts of the bat to induce weak contact. This was the ultimate competitor, the ultimate gamer. I think too much has been made out of his lack of postseason success, but you actually go back and look at Greg Maddux' numbers in the postseason. They're nowhere near as bad as you think. Unfortunately, he just never got the run support in the playoffs. But nevertheless, when I think of the greatest pitchers of all time, I know I'm gonna want to go with one of those guys who throw harder, but I always end up settling back on Greg Maddux. He was the mad dog. He was awesome. I absolutely loved Greg Maddux.
Do you think he would have, if he was around today, do you think he would have been given a shot to actually like get to the major leagues?
Great question. I don't think so. I
Neither
don't.
do I.
I don't. Nope.
I
And what
mean, you can
what a
sink it. You
tragedy.
can go
What a
ahead.
tragedy.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think like the whole emphasis of placement, movement,
Mhm.
changing speeds on
Yep.
every single pitch, keeping a batter off balance, like he's not breaking a radar gun.
Nope.
It's just I honestly don't think, like, of course I still think he would be successful if he got there. But he would be ranked as what in your farm system? Like
I I don't I don't know. I mean, again, a right-hander topping out 92, 93 miles per hour. Maybe they put him in the bullpen. And, maybe again, he's not a high draft pick, so now he's got to work your way through through your system. I don't know, but it shouldn't take anything away. I'm not saying that you're saying it should, but it shouldn't take anything away from what he accomplished. I think how he was able to accomplish what he accomplished with his tool set is one of the most remarkable things in baseball history. You're not going to see anything like this again.
I hated when the Mets played him because he was so infuriating, and you're
Mhm.
like, every single time they get such bad swings on it. I'm like, his little two-seamer sinker that he would always start off, like, off the plate to a righty and sink it back over in the corner. I'm like, that's borderline unhittable, and it's going
Yep.
89 miles an hour, and it was just consistent. He would get, like, 3 inches off the black, or if it was, like,
Mhm.
a postseason game, he would get, like,
Yep.
18 inches off the plate. But, I mean, it was just, like, it was just so infuriating, and he looks like an average Joe when he puts his spectacles on. I'm like,
Mhm.
how is this guy a major league pitcher? And it's just he was infuriating
You
being a
know,
Mets fan
the
watching him.
the Yankees wanted to sign him. I think the Yankees actually offered him more money than Atlanta did after the 92, 93 season. We say this all the time about Derek Jeter. Well, you say it more than I do. But the idea that Jeter's as famous as he is because he wore the Yankee uniform. I have this notion now that if Greg Mack signed with the Yankees and he continued to have this career that he ended up having, he would be considered the greatest pitcher of all time.
He
With the
doesn't seem
World
like a
with
Yankee
the
though to me.
with the World Series rings that he would have been a part of, he would have won the same amount of World Series there. I mean, they basically he would have been their Mike Mussina, if you will, but just better. I think if he was there and he did what he did with his career records that he would go on to amass, we would look back and we would say Greg Max is the greatest pitcher of all time. But the fact that he stayed in Atlanta, he didn't win the World Series, I think hurts him. But nevertheless, he's one of the greatest pitchers ever lived. I mean, he's
I
top five to me all time.
I agree completely. So my ace would be a pitcher that can transcend generations. I don't care if you throw him in dead ball era, you put him in the steroid era, which he pitched through. Probably one of the most dominant pitchers I have ever watched. The big unit, Randy Johnson. Two moments always stood out to me when I think back about Randy Johnson. The first one is in spring training when he absolutely destroys that bird that's coming across the
Yeah.
screen.
Yep.
One. The second moment, which will forever live in infamy with me, is the All-Star game in 1993 when he's throwing against John Kruk. And
Yep.
like he obviously like airmails one to the backstop. And then John Kruk to me looked like it was genuine where he takes the helmet off, puts it on like he was a right-handed batter, goes
Yeah.
into the right batter's box. Like I can't imagine being a left-handed hitter, a right-handed hitter wouldn't matter. I wouldn't have a shot. But being a left-handed hitter with that release point, with his slider, his velocity that he had,
I
to
mean,
me, there is no more of a dominant power fastball slider pitcher
yeah.
probably that I've ever seen.
There was no one who had more intimidation on the mound than
Yes.
Randy Johnson. You
And
know what's
from where he
amazing?
released it, from being so tall, like the
That's
ball's
what I
got to get
want.
on you so
I
quickly.
mean, look at the picture.
I
Look at the
know.
torque on his elbow.
Yeah.
And this guy avoided every single major arm injury.
22 seasons.
Yes. Yep. The only
Yeah.
issue he had was with his back. That's why he didn't work out with the Yankees. He was
Yeah.
old, his back hurt, and it was cold up there. That's why
And
he struggled so much.
he
But
beat
like,
up cameramen.
So yeah, so it's so funny when you talk about God. There's got to be a great book or an even greater study to come out to talk about this stuff. Because I look at Randy Johnson, I look at what he's doing to his elbow. How did he not have Tommy John? How did he not tear everything in that arm with how hard he was throwing? I don't know. I don't understand it.
It's something I say all the time too with like Nolan Ryan. How did he pitch all those years, all those pitches?
Mhm.
What was the game I was watching? Oh, they were talking about Bill Pulsiver when he
Yep.
came up for the Mets. The very first game that Bill Pulsiver pitched for the Mets, he threw like 138 pitches. Like, can you imagine like one of your prized prospects you bring up and have him throw 138 pitches? How many pitches does Skeens throw? Like 80,
Yep.
75?
Yep.
It's like it's completely different. It's
Yep.
like, did they not have?
It's good. I'm telling you, it's gonna come back. It has to come back.
I agree.
There will be a revolution that happens, I think, in the sport with the way we train pitchers. And hopefully, right, more of these aces that can have 15, 20 years careers can come back. Because I miss all these guys.
Yeah.
Number 3 for me, Jacob DeGrom. I mean, to me, he was really the first true Met player that I like fell in love with. And that goes back to my God, even 2015, game 5 against the Dodgers. He's going up against Kershaw. Kershaw's the ace. He's the guy. And it was DeGrom who dominated that day, even after that rough first inning. Um, I was when all the hype was around Harvey, and then all the hype was about Noah Syndergaard in 2016. DeGrom was the constant. And then DeGrom goes on this 4-year run where he was Sandy Koufax. And of course, injuries derailed it all. But one of the greatest experiences I ever had was going to Citi Field against the Padres, game 2, and I watched DeGrom's last game as a Met when A Simple Man by Leonard
Oh
Skinner came,
God, yeah.
and like you just there was this collective feeling in the ballpark that, and again, there's something about the Mets, and it's just different when it comes to the Mets. Even with all the failures and lack of World Series trophies, there are certain guys who are just ours, and like everyone just rallies behind. And I know David Wright was one of those guys. Piazza was one of those guys. The older generations, when they talked about Strawberry or Gooden or Keith Hernandez or Tom Seaver, this was one of our guys. And when that song hits and everyone gets loud and everyone has that feeling like, okay, DeGrom's on the mound and we're okay, there's nothing like it. And to be a part of that was absolutely amazing. I absolutely love Jacob DeGrom.
Uh, this is gonna sound so sacrilegious, and I don't want to have it sound that way.
Oh boy.
Can I jump to mine? Can I just
Go.
jump
Yeah.
to
Oh,
I'm
go.
gonna
Yeah,
go out
yeah.
of order with mine.
We've only been talking about an hour and 37 minutes. We're good.
So I'm gonna go with my
Yeah.
like my favorite Mets pitcher. So you said he didn't have the same persona or like this alter ego that Jacob DeGrom did not have.
Right.
To me, Matt Harvey did.
Yes, you did.
I enjoyed this is gonna sound like you're an idiot. How could you possibly say that?
It's
When
your
Matt
favorite,
Harvey
buddy.
was dominating, I enjoyed Matt Harvey more than I ever enjoyed DeGrom. DeGrom was dominant, the
Wow.
best Mets pitcher I've ever seen. His fastball, the way that he could place it, he just completely dominated. The Mets lost so many of his games, 1-0, and that doesn't have anything to do with it. He was just a matter of fact, like you didn't get any of that personality. There was no edge to him. When Matt Harvey came up, I remember his first outing against the Diamondbacks. I'm like, this cat is different. Now, this was the whole time when like Rafael Montero was supposed to be like the godsend, and like Matt
Yes.
Harvey was like not supposed to be.
Hmm.
Harvey to me was the Mets team where it was living up the New York City lifestyle. Who knows what extracurriculars he was partaking in? There's the whole story of the reason behind his bloody noses was because of like the cocaine use, but there was this whole atmosphere where it transcended the Mets, where it was like, we have our dark night. We have this guy that's going to shove for 7 innings. Now, when he came up, really, like the fact that he was throwing upper 90s with a fastball and his slider was sitting at the low 90s, that was like an anomaly in baseball at that time.
Yes,
It
it
was
was.
typically like your
Yep.
fastball was like low to mid 90s, maybe. Your off speed pitch is like mid to upper 80s. The
Hmm.
fact that he had a razor sharp slider sitting at like 92 consistently, and he was a gamer. And I
Hmm.
always think when I think about Matt Harvey, I think about the bloody nose game, but then I also think about Game 5 of the World Series. I will never forget that game where he goes out, he dominates. The Mets are down 3-1 to the Royals in the series, gives up no runs, strikes out 9 batters throughout 8 innings. Terry tries to take him out after the 8th inning. And then I will never hold it against Matt Harvey, but he was like, "No, I want the ball.
I'll do
I
you
want to go
one
back out
better.
there."
I won't hold it against Terry Collins. And
I won't either. I
I
won't
know
either.
Met fans do, but I'm sorry. Like we also knew who Jerry's Familia was too. So
Exactly.
you can't tell if they had taken Harvey out of the game
I would
and
rioted.
Familia or whoever we got had from the bullpen went in and blew that lead, we never would have been able to forgive Terry Collins
Yep.
ever.
I
That
completely
was our
agree.
guy. He was the man. He's the guy you want in that situation, and he's saying he wants the ball. Here you go. Go get him.
And he gets derailed by injuries. The Tommy John, the thoracic outlet syndrome just destroyed his career. And
Yep.
again, do I think he was like the beacon of what a professional athlete should do to keep his body intact? He was a little bit heavier. He obviously had like drug issues as well, which did derail him. But I
Yep.
always look at him, I'm like, if you could, because he was a bulldog. He
Yep.
was like a pit bull. He was the one that's like, I'm going to strike you out. You're going to have to pry this ball from my dead hand. That's what I always wanted in the Mets starter. DeGrom had better stuff. To me, Matt Harvey was more of the personality,
See,
more of like the
he
Doc Gooden rather than DeGrom was more of like the
DeGrom
Ron
was
Darling.
emotionless. That's what I love.
Exactly.
He was
Now,
like a
see, that's what
serial.
I don't like.
But see, it's funny because he was like a serial killer out there. Like, no matter what, he's got it. I'm calm. Nothing bothers me. No matter what happens, it's just not going to bother me because he had this. I mean, this calmness to him. Like his hand didn't do this in
Mhm.
any situation. Bases loaded, no outs, game 7, game 5, whatever. I'm good. Yeah, I was going to do this. And if I get hit, sure, you're going to have to earn it. And that's what I also love about DeGrom, too. He didn't give it bats away, ever. It never felt like that. He was coming at you. And if you hit him, you hit him. And
But
it was that mindset. That's what I love so much about DeGrom.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you can't go wrong anyway,
Nope.
but it was just the ground. Okay, so then we'll go back to yours then. I again, the fact that you chose him, the fact that you chose him in a Mets uniform, like
I did that for you, buddy.
I want to like verbally assault you.
Well, you had Pedro before this. Do you want to talk a little bit about Pedro?
Do you want me to go? You can
If you
go,
want,
Tommy. I'll
yeah.
go.
If you want to hit up on Pedro, you can hit up on Pedro.
All right, just with Pedro, probably the most dominant season I think I have ever actually
1999.
seen. What was it, 2000 when he had like
Yeah,
a
99. Yeah, yep,
174?
yep. 99, 2000. Yeah.
So
Yep.
for some of the stats, okay, 18 seasons. Okay, so I wrote down for 2000. For the year 2000, 18-6. Okay, that doesn't scream anything to you. 174 ERA in the peak of the steroid era. The man that's smaller than me, absolutely shoving. The fact, did you ever see the way his hands just absolutely bend when you
Yep.
wonder why he got the life on the changeup on his fastball that he
Oh
did?
yeah.
Just an absolute freak of a human being. But his stats for 2000, the year 2000, pitched 217 innings. You don't see that anymore.
Nope.
128 hits in 217 innings. He gave up 32 walks in 217 innings. So his whip, I'm going to do quick math. 128 and 32 is 30, 160 base runners over the course of 217 innings. Gave up 42 earned runs over 272 innings. 284 Ks over 217 innings. I don't think there's ever been a more dominant pitching performance in the recent era, nor will there be again, even when we're coming out of the steroid era, than Pedro was in the year 2000, or excuse me, the year 2000.
Yep. I agree. Yeah, he was awesome.
And the fact,
It's so funny when you said All Star. When I think All Star game, I think Pedro Martinez in '99 at Fenway.
did he
How
have?
he
He did.
made every hitter look like a child.
Yeah.
McGuire, Sosa, Bagwell, all the Larry Walker. I mean, they didn't stand a chance. This was the pinnacle of the steroid era. McGuire the night before had put on, up until that moment, one of the greatest home run derby performances of all time. And this small pitcher from the Dominican Republic made all those guys bow down to him. That was just to me one of the climaxes of the Pedro era. And yeah, I totally agree. When I think of actually the greatest pitcher I've ever seen. Everything I said about Maddox is true. He has said he's one of the top 5 all time. Pedro Martinez is the greatest pitcher I've ever seen before in my life. Pedro.
And even though he wasn't that great with the Mets, he transcended the
Older.
Mets from
Yeah.
like a laughing stock and gave them some validity where it's
Yep.
like, okay, now we're going to get Beltran. We're going to have we're going to be a force to reckon with. And again, he
Yep.
wasn't Pedro from Boston,
Right.
but he gave credibility to the Mets and kind of like rejuvenated that whole franchise, the whole fan base.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's go on to this decrepit.
Oh my God.
Where is he? Where is he? I can't even. There he goes. It's a disgrace.
Again, I'm going to keep it short and simple. Everything I said about Maddox, I'm going to say about Glavine. The fact that he was able to do what he did. And again, talk about another guy, Matt. I don't think it's a look. He's a lefty specialist probably today with the stuff he has. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean I don't think he couldn't be as effective against today's hitters. Tom Glavine, talk about bulldog mentality. That was Glavine. What Met fans have to appreciate is when you got Tom Glavine, you got him in his 30s. And look at what pitchers do today in their 30s. Now let's factor in a pitcher in his 30s who is topping out at 90, 91 miles per hour. If you really thought you were getting vintage Cy Young 93, 94, 95 Tom Glavine, I'm talking about the years, not his velocity, because he was lucky to touch 93, then you guys were dreaming. And I know he pitched the one game that Met fans always want to go back to.
September 30th, 2007.
I get it. I get it. But you're talking about adding validity to an organization. Glavine did that too for you guys. So
no, stop.
Maybe he did. Matt, he's a Hall of Famer. And again, he pitched pretty good for you guys throughout his Mets career. It wasn't Cy Young good, but how many pitchers did you expect to get in their mid to late 30s that was going to be Cy Young good for you? Especially guys who topped out at 92.
All he needed to do was to beat the Marlins, one of the worst teams in the league, doesn't even record an out. They're down 7-0, even before the end of the first inning. If I was to honestly see Tom Glavine walking down the streets of Rotterdam, emblazed in a fiery whatever, I would not piss on him to put it out. That's how much I hate Tom Glavine. Give me Adam Wainwright. Give me everybody else that has torched me. Give me Yadier Molina, who's caused me like mental distress over the years. Nobody is worse than Tom Glavine. Give me John Franco. Give me anybody. Put anybody. Kevin Appier. I go through the list of all the Mets who have absolutely crushed me. Tom Glavine is my least favorite Met of all time. Of all time.
He's a really nice guy.
I'm sure he is.
I got his autograph once. He was very nice.
And I bet you he's a Trump supporter. And
my God, let's move on. My God, with you tonight.
I don't even know where we're going with this.
I don't know where you're going anywhere tonight. You're killing me. All right, Hideo Nomo, do it up. Go ahead.
Hideo Nomo, a profound Joe Biden supporter. When I was doing my research.
Oh my God.
All right, so Nomo to me, again, so this is like peak wiffle ball in my backyard. I think every single person, when you're talking about like the Rockies and how you emulated all their batting stances, for the life
Everyone
of me,
did Nomo.
And legitimately, so I'm like playing like, I don't even know if it was Babe Ruth at that time. I was somebody like my dad being the baseball player was like very old school. So when I would pitch, I would do the rocking like hands over my head. But when he went with like the full like lockout and then the complete like return, like so you saw his entire back and just his motion, I don't know how many times I actually emulated that in the game to the point where I was like, I do not have the balance of him, and my rotation or my windup ended up looking more like Kevin Brown than Hideo Nomo. But he was just somebody that I always tried to emulate. The fact that he was like this anomaly. He like came out of nowhere. It's like this Japanese player coming over to America. It's like the Dodgers during that stretch just seemed to have the rookie of the year every single year. And I forget which one of the rookie of the year that he was, but he ends up getting the rookie of the year. Didn't have the longevity. But I also feel like he kind of like legitimized Japanese players coming over to America.
That's what starts it.
So when I looked up, the first Japanese baseball player was in 1964, Masamori Murakami. I'm butchering that.
Played for the Giants.
Yes. So, okay, so that happened so far before, but he was really my first time being like, oh, this guy isn't American, and he kind of like transcended. And it was almost like Fernando Venice. What's his name? Fernando
Valenzuela. Yeah,
Venezuela, like
from
that, like
Mexico.
hubbub that was like around him.
100%.
He brought over to America in the
100%.
mid 1900s and in the mid 1990s.
Yeah.
His windup, iconic. The no hitters that he threw. It was just somebody that I always tried to be, and I could never master that windup.
Love it.
Where's my little clicker?
There we go.
Okay. Oh God. No,
Love
there's
it.
a sexy man.
You know, and again, like Bartolo Colon, the reason it's list for me, because I mean, there's a lot of different pictures I could have picked, but those four are my guys. Like those four have always been my guys, or three: Glavine, Degrom, and Maddox. Bartolo was a guy you were always happy to watch. As a Met fan, I'll even go before that. Cleveland, you know, his stint with the Angels, everything. Because Bartolo made being a heavy guy kind of
Sexy.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you even go like if you play like in a softball league and the big heavy guy there, maybe he was an athlete back in the day. Then he goes out there and he's able to like just spin the ball or crush homers and all this stuff. Like Cologne was this guy who went out there, and again, there's something about the calmness in pitchers I absolutely admire.
Flipping the ball up in the air.
Yeah, it's like because that's what I want on my pitchers. That like, you know what? Nothing's gonna bother me. No situation's gonna bother me. I'm not gonna get too high. I'm not gonna get too low. Because as a hitter, you're always on edge. You're always on edge. You're trying to guess what's coming. You know, your swing is the mechanics, everything. The pitchers need to be the calm ones because they're the ones in control. Whenever I've coached baseball or softball, I've always tried to convey that to my pitchers is you want to be like still water. You want to be calm. You control the pace. You control the tempo of the game. It's your game. Go out there. And there was no person more fun watching being him on the mound than Bartolo Colon. Always had to smile. But when you need a big game, you felt fine with Bartolo Colon being in the game. See, people seem. I put the home run picture on there because that's the lasting image of Bartolo Colon. But I would recommend you go back, Colon numbers, go back and look at some highlights. This guy had a long career where he was always an effective pitcher, and he was one I absolutely loved watching.
And he transcended. Like when he first came up, he was like upper 90s. And when he was at the end of his career,
He learned how
he
to
was still
pitch.
getting people out throwing in the low 90s. Like again, the sink that he had on his pitches, like he was a
Absolutely.
true pitcher.
I mean, to me, that is the ultimate hallmark of a starting pitcher is you come in, you're this flamethrower, you have all this stuff, all this energy, and then we've seen a lot of those guys flame out of the game. You look at a Matt Harvey, you look unfortunately what's happened to Jacob deGrom. And then there you have Bartolo Colon, because the long career of a starting pitcher is rare to see. And when you look at all these guys who have had this long career, it's the ones who have learned how to pitch, have learned how to have their game evolve from a physical part to a more mental part of the game. And those are the guys I absolutely love rooting for.
I just wish he didn't have this steroid issue with him as well. And his whole family situation is a little weird, but he was just such a Mets icon.
What's his family situation?
He's got like multiple women pregnant. And it's just like not paying like child support. There's like shady stuff with his family.
Okay. Well, man.
Judge the art, not the artist. And a little.
Yeah, I guess so. But I keep that in mind for next time. Like I thought I did some decent background checks on something. I've actually left guys off my team for similar stuff, so I should have known that about Cologne. I apologize out there.
I actually, when he hit the home run, I was not watching. I had it on the TV. I went into the kitchen to get ice cream.
Yep.
I hear Gary Cohen freaking out.
Oh, go nuts. He went nuts.
And I run back into the room and I'm like, oh my God, what did I just miss? I missed Santana's no-hitter. I'm out that day. Don't see it. I find it at the very end. I miss his home run. I'm the bad luck. Yeah. I got to just stop watching and watch all these like good things happen. When you were talking about pitchers flaming out like Harvey, DeGrom for a little bit, my last pitcher is somebody that I love pitching as well because again I like to emulate his windup. He did flame out, but he was the freak, Tim Lincecum.
Yeah,
just the fact there was a stretch there where he just completely like dominated during his 2 Cy Young seasons. He didn't
Yep.
have the longevity that the other teams. I think he only ended
He
up
was
playing for like 10 years.
he was
But the
awesome
last
to watch.
oh my god, when he was for somebody of his stature, the way that he hid the ball was like when he turns his back and then drops the arm down, but you see it from behind home plate. You do not pick the ball up until it's literally like the ball is on you. I don't know if it's the hair flying all over the place. It's just you did not see. He hit the ball so incredibly
Yep.
well, and he got every single ounce out of his body.
He's one of the first real max effort guys, I feel like, of this
Absolutely.
generation. Absolutely.
And like his dad was like the coach to like get as much out of him as he physically
Mhm.
could. It was just like here's this scrawny little guy, and again he's like my height, he's like 5'10", to
Yep.
be able to have the velo that he had to
Yep.
dominate the way that he did. The Giants don't win all those World Series if it wasn't for Tim Lincecum.
Yep. He's a big
Just a
part of it.
complete like icon, rock
Yep.
star,
Well, I
flamed in,
feel like
flamed out.
the 3 World Series was, 3 different starting pitchers. Like,
Yeah,
Lincecum was the first one, Matt Cain, then Bumgarner. Like,
yeah,
those 3, but each one were aces at different times, I feel like.
yeah,
That's what made that dynasty very unique.
yeah. I will go into your last
My
one.
last one, again, in terms of appreciating exactly what I've been saying, these calm pitchers who seem to never get too high or never get too low. The reason why I put Tanaka on this list is because he embodies that. When you look at his Japanese career and the success he had coming over here in his 30s as a major leaguer in the hardest environment, I'm going to keep this short and simple. Every player who has worn that Yankee uniform in my lifetime, I have taken an issue with. There is only one player that I have never taken an issue with in any capacity, and that's Masahiro Tanaka. Every time he pitches, I go, God, he's good. Like, he's just consistently good. He's everything I want in a starting pitcher. I know exactly what I'm going to get from him every single outing. He had that 5-6 years with the Yankees, and then his 10, 15 plus career in Japan, where he was this guy. He was going 6-7 strong. He was going to strike out a handful of batters, and you weren't going to be able to barrel much up against him at all. Like, again, as a Met fan, I hate the Yankees. I hate Yankee players for, from a jealous standpoint, from a just not liking you standpoint, from a competitive standpoint. Masahiro Tanaka was never one of those guys. Every time I talk about Tanaka, it was always something positive. Whenever we talked to our mutual friend Mike, and we had these conversations, 10 years ago about these Yankee teams, I'd be like, Tanaka was just always a guy you kind of rooted for because the way he carried himself, his consistency, it was something I always wanted to see in the starting pitchers that I rooted for in my teams, but never really had. Tanaka was that guy, and I do. You think about these Japanese players. You talk about Namo, how incredibly hard it must have been for a lot of these guys to leave everything they knew in Japan to come over to this country and then excel. Like, Ichiro is the be all end all of all Japanese players. And now it's Shohei. But there is something about the New York market. There is something about being able to make it here. And the fact that he was as good as he was at the age he was for the Yankees, nothing but props for Tanaka and what he's done. And the way Japanese players revere him as well. Tanaka's the man. We don't talk about him enough in the States, and we should be because he was a great, great pitcher.
His split finger was dirty. That's what
Nasty.
I remember of him. His split finger just fell off a
Absolutely
table.
nasty. Yep. All right, so
Yeah.
let's look at the team. So these are the teams we got so far. Next time we're going to talk about our bullpens. We'll talk about our coaches. We'll even tell you this home stadium. We're not going to do a full bullpen. We're going to do a setup guy, a closer. We're going to do our head coach. We're going to do the stadium that we would play in. But Matt, I think you know what stadium I'm going to be playing in.
I'll make sure I wear a purple shirt.
There you go. Perfect. Awesome. And maybe bring your PG mind and voice with you next time.
Sometimes the teacher just gets away, and it's like, okay, I'm going back to Matt mode.
Let me tell you, it's May. We all should be cursing right now.
20 days left.
Oh God, tell me about it.
Make every day count.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week on Hats and Bats.